so I've been thinking recently about picking up Ace Combat 7. But gee, I know nothing about the game. Perhaps I should go into the review section and see what people are saying about the game. Did not include pre-order bonus. Invalid code. Digital code still can't be redeemed on USPSN. Physical copy missing pre-order content. False advertising. This pre-order does not have the Ace Combat 5 redeem code. By one time I pre-order something. Really disappointed. Boring, terrible storyline, unnecessary profanity. True Ace Combat game. No promised DLC. I don't have the extra content. What do you know? No pre-order content that was promised. Waste of time. No pre-order code inside case. Nor email. No pre-order incentives included. Game is good. No pre-order bonuses are bad. No pre-order content. Ace Combat 5 code? Don't waste your money on this game. The gameplay is silly. The controls are confusing. There is next to no tutorial on using the controls. Pre-order bonuses were a lie. Ripped off. Didn't include pre-order bonus. Why do people pay attention to these so-called reviews, quote unquote? Is it because people don't know how to think for themselves, or is it because gamers are just stupid? I'm thinking it's the latter, rather than the former. The problem with the video game industry, Part 5, Customer Reviews. Now, in this short series, which I planned on being 10 parts in length, I've already gone over what a lot of the major issues with the video game industry are. Now, I have yet to cover more important topics, such as microtransactions and season passes and online-only games, but I'll get to those. But for this particular video, I want to discuss the importance of customer reviews. Because see, there's two types of reviews when it comes to really any major entertainment product. You have your major publication reviews, which are written by professional journalists who aren't always professional, of course, but people who have degrees in journalism, right? And then you have customer reviews, so just normal people who digest content instead of creating the content. And the internet has made it so anyone can have a voice. Here's the thing. I made a video last year about video game reviews and why they're bullshit. And in that video, I focused mainly on professional review publications like IGN, GameSpot, Kotaku, Game Informer, so on and so forth. But I didn't really discuss customer reviews that much in that video. So I'm going to discuss them here. And to start out, I got a comment once again on those publication reviews. IGN in particular is one of the worst video game publications on the internet, if not the worst. A lot of their reviews are just dumb. The point decimal scores or whatever that they come up with, that shit doesn't make any sense. It's stupid. It's retarded. There's no point to it. There's no reason for it to exist. It's just something that they do that makes them stand out from other review publications. And I have an issue with websites like IGN and GameSpot, so on and so forth, because those websites don't review video games objectively most of the time. Sometimes, depending on the game and depending on the situation, they will give you an accurate review of said product. But usually what they'll do is they'll pick one person to review a game, and that person's opinion represents the website's view of that game. Instead of having multiple people play the game and you get multiple different opinions, multiple different perspectives, where someone may have liked it, but someone else may not have liked it as much, they'll only pick one person to review that game. And that system is broken. It doesn't work. Because if I watch a movie review from a YouTube channel like Collider or Double Toasted, the reason those reviews are great is because you get multiple different perspectives on the same product. Even if they all share the same opinion on the movie overall, they'll give different views as to, which parts of the movie worked more than others. Maybe one person felt that this part of the movie was good, but this part of the movie wasn't good, while someone else, that part of the movie may have worked for them by comparison. But you don't get intricate observations like that with video game reviews, which is the problem with them. However, if I had to compare professional publication reviews to customer reviews, I would place my faith more in the hands of a journalist, a gaming journalist, rather than some random asshole on the internet who doesn't even know how to slew together a few sentences in a way that's coherent. Another big problem with the video game community as a whole is that there's a lot of trolls and there's a lot of fanboys. I dedicated the first part of this series on fanboyism. And see, fanboys and trolls, another name for them being white knights and black knights, they'll go up on these websites when a game comes out. They will either give it the highest score possible, and they'll write a sentence or two saying the game is great. I just started playing it, which is a problem within of itself. So you just started playing the game. You haven't been playing it for more than 2 hours. For most of these reviews, of course. You've barely gotten down the game's mechanics, and yet you deem it to be the best thing ever. How is anyone supposed to take your opinion seriously? And then you have the opposite end of the spectrum, where you'll have some jackass go up on these websites, yet again, be it Amazon or Gamefly or Metacritic, and they'll give the game that they hate the lowest score possible, which on Amazon is like a 1 star, on Metacritic that's a 0, and they'll just bomb the game essentially. And sometimes they genuinely dislike the game, and they dislike it so much that they're willing to give it the lowest score possible and not recognize that the game is actually functional. It's a functional product that works, that hardly has any glitches, and it does have artistic value, such as the graphics, and mechanically the game probably works just fine, but they'll give it a 0 anyway because they're fanboys, and they're trolls, and they're stupid. And then other times, they'll give a game a 0 or a 1 star or whatever the case is, depending on the website that they're on. They'll give the game the lowest score possible because they're trolling. They have nothing else better to do with their time, and they'll write a few sentences with some really bad jokes, all in an attempt to piss people off so they can get 5 seconds of fame on the internet from people that they can't see, that they're not truly interacting with, to entertain themselves. And internet trolls are everywhere. They're on YouTube. I myself have had to block a numerous amount of people on YouTube because of how stupid they are. But this is the kind of bullshit that we have in the video game community. This is a community problem. And I think to myself about why gamers have the issues that they have in real life, such as why women aren't normally attracted to gamers, and it's because they have a child mentality and they don't know how to grow the fuck up, and why a lot of gamers are socially inept for the same reason that I just mentioned. And it's because they take games so seriously to the point that it really consumes their life, and they don't know how to unplug and step away from the controller for a bit and find other things in life that are just as enjoyable, if not more so. You know, some of these people up on the internet in the gaming community, this is their life. This is what they do in their free time, practically 24/7. They play video games, they comment about video games, and that's just what they do. Which, if that's how you spend your time and you want to waste your life playing video games 24/7, that's on you. There's consequences to that, obviously. But you can do what you want to do with your time. It's your life. But pretending to be a video game journalist and going up on these websites and giving these bullshit, poorly written, inconsistent, incoherent, nonsensical, garbage-ass reviews doesn't do anything good for gaming. Because people pay attention to customer reviews. People want to hear the opinions of other people who are just like them, people who are not in the video game industry, people who do not have a degree in journalism. You can have a game that's really good, and it's not as good as everyone says it is. It has objective flaws to it, but it's still a good game at the end of the day. A perfect example of that would be Red Dead Redemption 2. And maybe you have some frustrations with the game, and you want to get your opinion out there. There's a proper way to go about doing that. Going up on Metacritic and giving the game a 0 because there's parts about the game, there's aspects about it that you don't like. That's just childish, you know? That's just, what the fuck is that? And with some of these people, I can tell they do it consistently. Like, every single time there's a game that comes out, and they love it to the point where it's a perfect score. 10 out of 10, 5 star out of 5 stars. Or they just hate it, they can't stand it, 1 star out of 5, a score of 0 out of 10. They have a consistent pattern of doing this with every single game that comes out. I'm sorry, but I can't take your fucking opinion seriously because you clearly have a maturity problem. There are certain games that have been released this console generation that are absolutely just not good. They're not good games. They've been praised, they've sold millions of copies, and overall, the overall consensus is that they're good, but objectively speaking, some of these games aren't as good as everyone says they are. In fact, some of these games have some major flaws to them. So when some idiot from IGN gives a game like Metal Gear Solid 5, for example, a perfect score, I understand that they're not reviewing the game, they're reviewing the hype of the game. They're reviewing the artistic factor of the game. So the graphics, the mechanics, that sort of thing. They're not giving an actual objective review of the game because that game has a lot of major flaws to it. And that game in particular is in no way a 10 out of 10. But if I go to the customer reviews for that game and I see people giving a game like that 10 out of 10s, this is the best game ever. This is a fantastic Metal Gear Solid game. This is one of the best games I've played in the last 10 years. This is the best game I've played this year. I can't remember what year Metal Gear Solid 5 was released. What was it? 2015? Something like that. It's like, this is why YouTube has made it so people who can see through all this bullshit can create a video, actually tell the truth about a product that you just don't get on these other websites. I can't actively take serious almost any video game review. The only time a video game review to me seems like it's actually authentic is based off of an area of overall consensus. So for example, a game like Jump Force. A game like that comes out and it's getting mediocre reviews across the board. No one's really praising the game overall. And I go up on Metacritic and I don't care about the overall score the game has on Metacritic. I'm actually reading some of the descriptions of what people have written about the game, and I see some of the same complaints from review to review. That means that there's something wrong with this game, and there's no way that it's worth a $60 purchase. I don't need to play the game to understand that there's something wrong with it. I can read the reviews and then I can watch the gameplay and then I can see, okay, yeah, that's what they're talking about. I don't need to play the game myself to depict whether or not the game is good. And I hear that a lot. And I see that kind of comment a lot on the internet. Oh, you need to play the game yourself. You can't say whether a game is good or not unless you've played it yourself. Bullshit. I can see the gameplay from the gameplay footage that the company releases, who's publishing the game, or who's worked on the game. I can see how the mechanics have been designed. I can go on forums and I can see what other people have been saying about the game. And I can match that up with what I'm seeing on screen. I don't need to actually play the game myself to determine whether the game is good or not. That's what the point of reviews are for in the first place. But my point is, most video game reviews that are out there aren't worth a damn. There's a small limited number of reviews that are actually trustworthy. Some people like certain reviewers on YouTube. That's fine. I don't place really any faith in reviews from YouTubers because YouTubers, most of them do not have degrees in journalism. And I'm not saying you need to have a degree in journalism to review a video game, but people on YouTube who review video games come at them from a very biased perspective. And so their opinion isn't trustworthy to me. I think the only reviewer on YouTube that I've seen who doesn't work for IGN, doesn't work for GameSpot, who reviews video games consistently, that's worth a damn, is probably ACG. And even with him, I still have an issue with his review style, with the unnecessary jokes that aren't funny, and going too much into detail on things that really don't matter, such as the game's sound. Like, I don't give a fuck about the game's sound. The game sounds fine. I don't care about, if it's surround or if it sounds good through speaker or whatever. I don't care about that shit. But that's something that he does with pretty much all of his reviews. I don't care about that. But for the most part, I would say he's probably the only reviewer on YouTube who reviews video games consistently. He's made his own channel out of it. That's trustworthy. Not 100%, of course, but for the most part. For me personally, when it comes to reviews, I take everything with a grain of salt. If I see multiple people complaining about the same aspect of a game, then it's probably true. And even then, does that thing actually ruin the game? Is that an actual complaint about the game, or is that just a minority group of people bitching about something that really doesn't matter? Either way, the only time I really pay attention to video game reviews is if I'm planning on buying a game that I really don't have any experience with. So something like Ace Combat 7, which I used as an example at the beginning of the video, or a game like Jump Force, which I originally had pre-ordered, and I canceled my pre-order after seeing the response that game was getting, and a lot of the lazy decisions that the game developers on that particular game made. But I think the overall problem with the gaming community is that it's filled with a bunch of people who don't really have any experience with playing certain franchises, and they rely on other people to make up their own mind, whether something is good or whether something is bad. And the best way to go is always to play something yourself and give your own opinion as to whether or not something is good or not. But if you're going to do a written review on one of these websites, it has to be consistent. It has to be more than just 2 or 3 or 4 fucking sentences. So it actually has to be a written review. And it has to be something that's not filled with a bunch of fanboy jargon. And what do I mean by that? I mean throwing in a bunch of buzzwords to either bring something up or to bring it down. So basically placing something on a pedestal unnecessarily, or placing something under the bus unnecessarily, depending on whether or not you actually liked something or whether you hated something. So a good example of that, and probably the best example of that I've seen, is when some idiot named David on Amazon reviewed Bloodborne. And he stated, "Bloodborne reminded me why I'm a gamer." Now, reading something like that, I can tell automatically that his review is complete bullshit, because it's biased. It's a very biased and narrow-minded view of gaming as a whole. And Bloodborne is in no way a perfect game. That game has a lot of issues. All of the Dark Souls games, or Souls-like games, have huge flaws to them. Anyone who can't see that properly is a fanboy, plain and simple. If a game like Bloodborne reminded you why you enjoy playing video games, why you enjoy the medium of video games, then that's just a reflection on how piss poor your taste actually is. Not saying that Bloodborne is a bad game. It's a good game, but to throw it on a pedestal like that and to praise the game just blindly is ridiculous. And sure, he wrote a lot in his review, but a lot of what he wrote is from a biased perspective. Therefore, it's garbage. And so many people found this review helpful, which just says how misguided the video game community has become. And later in his review, I noticed he wrote, "There are no cheap deaths." That is straight horseshit. There's a lot of cheap deaths in the Souls franchise, because the games aren't designed perfectly. They have issues. Bloodborne damn sure has issues. And then he wrote later in his review, not only do you get amazing challenging gameplay, which that can be said for a lot of different games, you also get the graphics that this generation of consoles promised, and a detailed world to play in. You know, this reading stuff like this kind of makes me a little angry, because it's like, you're lying. The Souls games do not have the best graphics in the world. Bloodborne doesn't have the best graphics in the world. There's a lot of muddy textures on the character models in that game. And if you look at the finer details of certain objects in the environment, it's not the best graphically. It doesn't have to be, and the game looks good enough. But he said, you get the graphics that this generation of consoles promised. No, you don't. Not in Bloodborne. No, you don't. No, you do not. A game like the newest God of War, Spider-Man, Hellblade, Injustice 2, Red Dead Redemption 2, Final Fantasy 15, games like that, Horizon Zero Dawn, Resident Evil 7, those games are graphically up to date. The Souls games aren't. They're just not. So this is what I'm talking about. Using buzzwords and placing games up on a pedestal where they don't belong. I can't take your review seriously if you're just straight lying in your review. That's why at the end of the day, it's best to play a game yourself and come up with your own opinion of that game. And to only use video game reviews when it's for something that you don't have a lot of experience with, as I mentioned before. But as a lasting thought, if I had to compare customer reviews to the major review publications that are out there, I would trust an IGN review 10 times over before I trust a review from some random person on the internet. Because at least when I read an IGN review, it's an actual written and consistent thing. It may not be coherent. There may be parts of the game that the reviewer left out due to stupidity or just a biased opinion of that game, but it's still a review. It may not be a good review, but it's a review. Compared to someone who just wrote 3 sentences saying, game is great, I'm enjoying it, 5 stars. That's not a review. That's fanboyism. That's what that is. And the less fanboyism that I see on these websites, the better.